Well, congratulations.
Thank you. It's lovely to be up here with you too.
So how has, you've gone all over the world since 1983. It's been a remarkable 20, 25 years, and yet now you find yourself in the midst of the most bizarre culture, Washington, D.C. How has that adjustment been?
It's a very, very steep learning curve.
Culture shock, right?
Culture shock and a steep learning curve. But look, it's fascinating. I mean, look, you all know so much more than I do. I'm really learning this, and it's a very interesting and important moment right now, particularly obviously with this presidential year. And I think the thing that I keep trying to figure out is where is that space where politics can actually get things done. I'm still waiting to see that.
I think we're waiting too.
Yeah.
We're all waiting.
We may be waiting a while, actually, for that.
I think somebody said he was the one that we're all waiting for.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's an interesting place to put you with this week, and with Washington being so central to the national conversation, but then foreign policy news exploding literally as you took over the helm of this week.
Well, it was amazing because imagine Egypt exploding, obviously before that Tunisia, and then Libya, and everything we're seeing. And actually the network took a decision, and a lot of people went out there. I took the program out there, and it was sort of part foreign correspondent, part Sunday morning host, and we did, you know, not just the daily reporting in Tahrir Square and all of that, but we did get actually one of my favorite roundtables in the field, which was so cool, in this amazing space in Egypt, this beautiful building. We had Egyptian journalists, American journalists, and some, you know, political types. And we did a really interesting way of, I thought, sort of bridging the global perspective with the US perspective, and kept even that story within sort of the four corners, the parameters of a Sunday program.
Could you imagine when you took over this week that you would be interviewing Mubarak and Gaddafi, and that they would be out of power within a year? Is that not remarkable?
It is remarkable, actually, and it's, you know, a lot of people ask me, is this a scary moment for us, or is it a hopeful moment for us? And I really believe that it's a hopeful moment, because obviously it's a challenge and nobody quite knows exactly how it's going to turn out. I get a little bit depressed by everybody who sees the glass half empty. I always see the glass half full. And I think that it is remarkable that these young people, actually people from all strata of society there, men and women, you know, kids, old people, poor, rich, everybody, wanting one thing, and that is what we all have. Accountable government, the ability to change your government every now and again, the ability to have, you know, the wherewithal to raise your family and to have some dignity. That's a word that I hear all over the world, dignity.
Could you explain for us, because we had the clip of the man saying he hated you, and he hated Americans. I want to congratulate you, because actually most of the news coverage, there wasn't a lot of hatred towards America. There you seemed to catch the one guy in the crowd that said, "We hate you, leave." But one of the most stunning things following the revolution in Egypt was that you didn't see American flags burning. You didn't see Israeli flags burning. You didn't see anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism. Talk about what happened in Egypt, what happened in Tunisia, and what's happened over this Libya, where it's not driven by anti-Americanism, it's driven by young people wanting their country,
and the role
their
of technology.
destiny.
Well, exactly. I mean, the "we hate you, get out of here" were people who were pro-Mubarak supporters. And obviously they looked at all journalists, whether local journalists or the demonstrators or us, as basically helping to create the revolution. That's how people see us. That's why it's so dangerous right now for journalists all over the world. People see us no longer as these neutral truth tellers, but rather as one side or another. So that was that moment, I think. And yeah, I mean, that was difficult. But I was actually really gratified, because so many of the protests and demonstrations I've covered over the last, certainly since 9/11, burning Israeli flags, burning American flags, burning people in effigy, and to see this sort of pure outpouring of just people power. was I think, is the takeaway to that. And obviously social media and Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of it didn't cause the revolution, but was the indispensable tool to organize in a situation where there is no ability to organize. And I know people are concerned, and they're worried here, will it be another Iran? Will it be an Islamic revolution, a hardline Islamic revolution? Personally, I don't think so. I don't. You know, Libya is a little bit difficult because we're not quite sure exactly what they're going to do there, and I was actually, frankly, very disappointed that on the day of declaring their liberation formally, the first act of the National Transitional Council was to lift the ban on polygamy. Personally, I thought there were more important things that you could do to show, I thought it was a very bad sign. However, even though in Tunisia, the moderate Islamist party won, and maybe even in Egypt, the Islamist parties might do very, very well, I believe strongly that it is inevitable that Islam will play a political role in the emerging democracies because they had no political space. Their only political space was in the mosque or in their houses, and that's how they organized grassroots politics. And it was very powerful in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood, you know, had schools and health and all sorts of things for people. It's a bit like sort of, you know, Hezbollah and Hamas. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they get elected, or they did at that time.
I want to ask you a big picture question about, because we're honoring such incredible journalists from around the world, and you, in the heart of it, are a foreign correspondent. You cover the world. Let's take a look, if we could. I'd love to get your opinion or your thoughts on American television news. We've been frustrated with the lack of coverage, or not lack of coverage, but not enough coverage of Afghanistan, for example. Try and talk about it a lot on our show. You obviously focus centrally as much as you can on the things that you find important. But do you think there are places around the world and hotspots around the world where we missed the mark, or we could have done more?
I mean, the short answer is yes, of course. I mean, I would say that because I have spent my whole career on the road, and I strongly believe in that mission. I believe in bringing those stories to an American audience.
You're now aware of the friction.
Yeah. So, you know, it's hard.
Frustrating.
It's hard, but you keep trying to do as much as possible. But the thing is, you know, it's not Fortress America anymore. America is 100% globalized and interlinked. And whether you look at education, whether you look at the economy, whether you look at security, whether you look at technology, whatever it is, you know, America is now sort of inextricably linked with the rest of the world. And so it just stands to reason that one should have, I think, a lot more news about the rest of the world. Not as a sort of shove it down your throat, or, oh, don't they do it better than we do it. Not that, but just to show what is going on in the rest of the world, in places where they're doing it right, in places where they're doing it wrong, in places where they're allies of the United States, in places where they're adversaries. I just think knowledge, I mean, we're in the business of knowledge and information. You can't just amputate half your body. Right. You know, you need that knowledge and information to be strong. Power today is information, and I think you need that. And the other thing I think is, and we've seen it from the winners here, and you see it, I mean, if you listen to NPR, if you watch 60 Minutes, I mean, there are plenty of successful programs that can mix, or Morning Joe.
Exactly.
But there's not so much packaging and storytelling.
Not packaging, no, but my God, the conversation is really, I find spellbinding. Wakes me up in the morning.
Wait a minute.
I talk a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, let me take the next couple questions. So I remember watching you in January of 2005, I think it was, the elections in Iraq. And a lot of people have been cynical up to that moment, but that, of course, was where we saw the iconic pictures of the women who were holding their finger up.
Purple fingers.
Purple finger up, had risked their lives. Iraqis showed extraordinary courage. And I remember watching you that day reporting, and I actually saw a crack in your facade.
No.
And well, there was a joy. No, you were joyous at that moment because it was actually the first bit of good news that had come out of that country. Of course, it was just a year later
that
the Golden Mosque was destroyed, and Iraq descended into hell for at least 2 years. So with that as a backdrop, you're still optimistic moving forward.
I am, and I'm also very joyous. I just am not a cynical person, and I get very moved by these amazing, historic, human moments. I just do. And when you see people who have been oppressed all their lives and suddenly have a moment, even though they don't know whether it's going to turn out well or badly, but in that moment, they have this hope, they have this vision, this possibility that something is going to change and something can be better. You know, they've seen their dictator no longer be able to act with impunity, that now these people are being held accountable. And there's something deeply moving about that. And there's something deeply moving about the triumph of the human spirit and the fact that, you know what? We're all the same. We're all the same. What you want, what I want, what they want in Egypt and Tunisia and Iran and Afghanistan and Iraq, everywhere. It's the same. It's the same.
So what was the moment over the last year? Pick the moment, because of course Tom Brokaw always talks about the wall coming down for him.
I wasn't at the wall, by the way.
Yeah, but what was the moment for you over the past year?
It has to be the Arab Spring. Yeah. I mean, you know, especially since 9/11, and you know, I come from that part of the world. I mean, I'm half Iranian, and I've seen revolution. I've seen how it can go wrong, but I've also lived and tried to explain through storytelling. Even on this week, we did a whole Islamic town square this time last year before the Arab Spring. You know, we've all said, where are the young voices? Where are the voices of the moderates? Where are the people who are saying things that are not extremist and they're not scary and they're not sort of nihilistic? And here are these people who spontaneously came out. Not because they were urged by the United States or anybody, but because they believed it in the depths of their hearts and souls, and because suddenly they saw an opening and they took it. And they told all of us, here we are, we're standing here now, we're trying to grab our freedom, so help us and believe in us. I find that really moving and really powerful, and I hope the United States helps them in all the ways that it can.
So what's the future for
them?
Iran?
Oh, I don't know.
For Iran?
I don't know.
Are you hopeful?
I find that very sad and depressing. You know, I was there in 2009 for the election, and people said to me in Persian, you know, they said to me, Miss, you know, this is it. We're going to change it. We're going to take our destiny in our hands. And then, you know, when the government is willing to shoot, when the security forces are willing to get out there and crack heads and imprison people, in the end, freedom depends on how many of the government soldiers and the police or whoever are willing to shoot, and how many of the protesters are willing to die.
Well, how many people have to be shot in Iran before you and other journalists might say some of the same things you said in Bosnia? When is it the international community's responsibility to step forward and assert moral authority?
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I do believe that we have a moral obligation. I believe that in Bosnia, when I talked about objectivity is our golden rule. We're not to take sides, but objectivity doesn't mean creating neutrality where it doesn't exist. It means telling the truth. And so I believe, and I've certainly tried to in Iran, and I know many journalists have, and they've, you know, I was lucky, I was able to leave. Many have been imprisoned. But, you know, that's what journalism is about, telling those stories. But in the end, it's also about the people. Are they willing to come out? They tried during the Arab Spring, they tried on February 14th, you know, as Egypt and Libya and all of that was happening, and they were beaten back into their holes. And until they're willing to create another revolution, remember they only had theirs 30 years ago. Populations don't revolt all the time. And I know people want it badly. It's not yet the time, obviously, but it will happen, and it'll just happen like that.
We will be watching your work with great admiration.
Thank you.
Christiane Amanpour,
thank you,
everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.